Hello, everybody. This is the last final summation here of our study in the sermon series that we've been doing. I've entitled "The End of All Things" over the book of Revelation. So we have examined over the last 7 weeks the context, the meaning, the imagery, everything that is going on in this crazy book, Revelation, which is the last book in the Christian Bible, in the New Testament, and it describes the end of the world, rather the renewal of the world. So I just want to sum up everything and sort of discuss this morning the full context of what does this text mean beyond all this other stuff. So we have, beginning 7 weeks ago, looked at the historical context of this book, really dug down to see what this book was about. And it's Christ's youngest apostle probably is writing this story, John of Patmos, who is writing in exile at a time of persecution, an empire-wide persecution in the 90s AD under the Emperor Domitian. And we have viewed this book through two interpretive lenses, which is the preterist and the historical critical lens. So the historical critical meaning that we have, that the events that are taking place within the scripture are part of the Roman world and designed to be interpreted as that, and not really a futurist interpretation, but rather the preterist interpretation suggests that there are both things that are historical critical as well as some things that are yet to come. So we have used both of these interpretations, and we saw that Christ at the very beginning of this book is giving encouragement to 7 churches in Asia Minor, over which John probably was some type of an archbishop type figure, an elder of great importance. And Christ tells these Christians who are being persecuted to keep a pure and robust faith in the midst of this great persecution. Then we saw that there are many signs of the confirmation of the old Mosaic covenant of the Israelites and the new Christian covenant. We see, for instance, 24 elders who are standing before the throne, worshiping the lamb that looks like it has been slaughtered because it is worthy because of this sacrifice, right? The lamb representing Christ, the 24 elders representing 12, the number of fulfillment in the Old Testament patriarchs, as well as Christ's 12 apostles, or the 12 tribes of Israel. All of this is showing a sign of fulfilling the old and new covenants. And this lamb that is found worthy to open the scroll, the will of God, a scroll that is sealed with 7 seals in the right hand of God, who is seated on a throne in heaven. And as these seals are opened, there are a series of judgments upon the world. But before these judgments occur, there is a sealing of 144,000. So 12 times 12, 144,000, representing the 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Again, confirmation of the old covenant. And then there is a countless multitude of nations and languages who are also sealed in heaven. And again, this is not a rapture. The rapture is a made-up concept from the 1840s, 50s, and made popular in our own time. But this is a sign, a confirmation of baptism, that this is the new covenant. They are sealed with the mark of God on their foreheads and on their hands, right? They are washed with the new waters of baptism, that they are taking part in this new covenant. This is not something where people are beamed up into heaven. Rather, it is part of this world. It is a new covenant. And then we see an angel coming to the heavenly altar with a golden censer that is filled with the prayers of the saints. And they are asking for justice. And God is getting ready to deal out judgment. There is silence in heaven for about 30 minutes. This means God is getting ready to act, and act God does. We then see angels who are given 7 trumpets of wrath, and they again deal out more judgments, like the opening of the seals of God's will. And then we see a giant angel descend from heaven, and he places 1 foot on the land, and he puts 1 foot on the sea. And he has a little scroll in his hand, and he says, "John, come up here and eat this scroll." And what this is symbolizing is God is making John the prophet of the New Testament. The prophets of the Old Testament, many of them 8 scrolls, and this is symbolic of his authority to become the prophet of the New Testament, the new Christian prophet. And then we see a portent in heaven, right? A very important sign, a vision of a woman who looks like the sun, whose feet are on the moon. And we see that this is a sign of perfection, and the woman is getting ready to bear a child. And this is double imagery here. So the woman is, of course, Mary. It was revealed that in the heavenly temple that the Ark of the Covenant was shown. And then immediately this portent happens. So Mary, the mother of Christ, is seen in perfection, that she is bearing this child, that Mary is this woman, and also this woman is Israel, that they are bringing forth this new thing. It was of the old person bringing forth the new person. This is the new covenant coming out of the old covenant. So the woman is both Mary and Israel, and the child is both Jesus and the church. Then immediately a war breaks out in heaven, and the dragon, who is Satan, fights to destroy the child, the new church, as well as Jesus himself. And Satan is cast out from heaven. Saint Michael the archangel leads a great army, a heavenly host, and Satan is defeated. Then we saw this very strange imagery of beasts of land and sea. And the sea is always representative of peoples who are not Israel, and the land is always representative of Israel. And the beast of the sea, of course, with 7 heads and 10 horns, represents Rome. 7 heads are Roman emperors, and the crowns represent the 10 principalities of the Roman Empire at the end of the 1st century. And the land beast is this priesthood of the false prophet. And we see this group of people throughout the empire declaring that the Roman emperors are divine and that they should be worshipped. So this is the imagery of a false prophet, that they should not be worshipped, that God alone is worthy of worship. And we see one particular head of the beast has the mark of the beast upon it, 666. And we learned that in ancient languages as Latin, Greek, Hebrew, that letters equal numeric values, such as C equals 100 in Latin. And when you spell out 666 in Hebrew, it spells out Caesar Nero, who was one of the most horrible emperors, the greatest persecutors of Christians. And this is the mark of the beast, when you take the ways of the world, when you worship the world instead of God, that it is not maybe a literal mark, but it is a mark that you take in your mind and your deeds, that on your head it is in your mind, and on your hand it is, of course, representative of your deeds. So when people of the Roman world and in our own time take this mark of the beast, there is going to be judgments. And we see 3 angels who began to cry out that there is a time for judgment coming for those who worship the beast, those who worship the world. And then we see Christ, the white rider on the white horse, with the 144,000 on Mount Zion, which is Jerusalem. And there are 7 bowls of wrath that are poured out upon the earth. Again, more judgments against those who do not have the mark of God, but who have the mark of the beast. And finally, we see another portent in heaven, that there is a scarlet beast in the whore of Babylon. And this is the same beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. We've met this guy before. It is the Roman Empire. And an angel calls out, "Fallen, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." Rome will be defeated. Rome will fall because of her sins. And the priesthood of the false prophet will also be defeated because they are unfaithful to God. The prophet John is using here language of infidelity, that they are breaking the marriage covenant, that they have not been faithful to the true God, but they have been faithful to false idols, that this is worshiping the world and things of the world and not God. Then we come to the wedding feast of the Lamb. After Rome, the beast, and the false prophet have been laid low, there is a wedding feast. That the Lamb that was slain, who was found worthy, who opened the scroll, has brought about new things. That this is a new covenant, a new time, that the Lamb has come to this wedding feast. And the beast, the false prophet, are thrown into a lake of fire. They are eliminated. This is a new thing, a new marriage covenant. And then we come to this time they call the millennium. And it is we learned, a representative time of a long time between the spiritual resurrection when we die and the literal second bodily resurrection at the end of time after the last judgment. So Christians believe. And this can be interpreted many ways. Some have said it's a literal 1,000 years, but we found that amillennialism is merely a representative. This 1,000 years is representative for a long time, as many numbers in Revelation are representative, that they are symbolic, figurative, not to be taken literal. And during this time, Satan is bound, but his influence is still strong. And at the end of this time, Satan's full power is released upon the world, and he rallies the armies of Gog and Magog, symbolizing the eternal enemies of God's people, of the church of Israel. And Armageddon happens, the last great battle. And once again, the white rider, Christ, shows up with the heavenly host, and they are victorious. All evil is vanquished. And then the last judgment occurs. The book of life is opened, and all those who are found to be righteous, who have endured for the faith through suffering, are given a place in the new heaven and the new Jerusalem, which comes, the new Jerusalem descends out of the new heaven. God has remade the world here. He has united the old and new covenants. He has annihilated evil. And God has come to dwell with mortals, both the living and the dead, forever. So this was not the end of all things, but this was the renewal, the remaking of all things. So this, folks, is the book of Revelation. And it's heavy imagery, and it's very interesting. But what ultimately is the point of all this? To tell this great story through, it takes enormous erudition to get through. What does this mean to us? I think that I can answer this in one word, and that is endurance. Endurance. That as Christians, we are called to endure through the struggles of this world. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, for instance, who was a Lutheran pastor during the time of the Second World War, during the time of the Nazi aggression, he kept the faith. He endured for the faith when it wasn't easy. That he refused to take part in the genocide of the Jews. He refused to accept the Nazi regime. He led an underground movement, and he just simply refused to participate in this. And ultimately, this led to his arrest by the Gestapo, and ultimately his martyrdom in 1945, 21 days before Berlin was taken by the Allied armies. He did his duty as a Christian when it was not easy. And as Christians, we are called to emulate in this example. And this is the imagery that comes out of Revelation again and again and again. That we have to not only believe for the faith, because faith is not just about believing. Faith is, of course, about the doing of our faith. I know it's kind of some odd language, but I think it illustrates the point. Doing of faith is what here is so key. It's not just about believing, it is about acting upon that conviction within your heart. For as St. James reminds us in his book, faith without works is dead. God demands of us obedience, loyalty, and fortitude. And it's easy, I think, to be a Christian when things are going well, but when the chips are really down, when we have to endure in our own times, when we see riots going around, we see worldwide pandemics. This is the time that you have to have strength and fortitude. This is what God is calling upon us to do within Revelation. It is to endure. This is where the sheep and the goats are separated. That those who are strong in their faith, who will remain truly faithful, will be found righteous. When your faith costs you something, when it costs you money or your friends, your reputation in certain circles, your influence in the world, even in some cases your life, if you are called to martyrdom, we have to bear with faith through these struggles. For as John reminds us time and time again in this book, your deeds follow you. And at the last judgment, Christ will declare your faith to be righteous, or he will say, I never knew you. So if you carry on the struggle, if you never deny the faith, if you earnestly bear whatever that may befall you in this world, for the sake of Christ who died for all of us, the slaughtered lamb that is found worthy, you will taste victory. So endure, Revelation is telling us. Struggle for the faith. Do what is not easy. But take what befalls you in a spirit of peace. Pray for your enemies. For the reward of a Christian is not in this world. This is not a call to arms. This is a call to endurance. It is a victory that will come not in this world and not in this time, but a victory that will come in glory. For vengeance is the Lord, it is not ours, and those who worship evil will reap the fruit of their deeds, as will the righteous reap the fruit of their deeds. And God will, John tells us, have the final victory, and he will reward those who have endured for the faith through adversity. As in chapter 21 in Revelation, John writes regarding the New Jerusalem, Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming out of heaven from God. See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. And God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. So endure all things, my friends. Endure with patience, endure with fortitude, and be safe in the knowledge. Feel safe in the knowledge that Christ will bring all justice in his good time. And John ends the book of Revelation with these words. The words of Jesus. It says, See, I am coming soon. My reward is with me, to repay according to everyone's work. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those whose robes are white, so that they will have the right to the tree of life and may enter the city by its gates. Endure, 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 God tells us. Endure for the faith is this eternal message in Revelation. Keep the faith when it is not easy to do, and you will taste your reward in glory. Endure. Amen.